So here are the two pieces by the two artists that we're going to hear from this evening. And I should back up and introduce myself. My name is Amanda Cooper. I am the chief curator for the Morian Art Center. And this is a picture of the Morian Art Center. We're located in downtown St. Petersburg, and we are a 104-year-old community arts institution. So we've been around for a long time. And the show that these two artists are in right now is called Fresh Squeezed 5, which, as you can imagine, means there was 4 other ones before this. And this exhibition consists of 5 emerging artists who work in different areas of the state. And you can see their work in person in our galleries through June 24th. So I'd encourage you all to come by and see their work. So a little bit about Fresh Squeezed. Fresh Squeezed started back in 2017 when we were celebrating our 100th anniversary here at the Morian. And it was a way for us to, we've always been working with emerging artists. That's what we do. We're a community art center. So we like to come alongside emerging artists and help them in any way we can, to give them a platform, to show their work, to sort of, a lot of times we're the first place an artist shows before they go on to museum shows or that sort of thing. So we decided to come up with a program where we do something very intentional with emerging artists. So it started in 2017, and here's one of our original Fresh Squeezed artists who took the theme literally and squeezed orange juice every weekend for for the duration of the show. That guy was a true performance artist. Whoops. Here is Katrina Sarah. She was from Fresh Squeeze 2. And every year it's an open call. So we invite artists from all over the state to apply. And each year we get about 150 applicants, and we can only pick about 5 to 7 artists for the show. So it's a very difficult choice to narrow it down because we have so many fabulous artists in this state. And the way we define an emerging artist is you have to be living in Florida, and the only criteria we have is that you have not had a solo show yet in the state of Florida. And we don't count BFA or MFA shows. Otherwise, we wouldn't get anyone with a college degree. So that's a pretty broad criteria. So it doesn't matter how old you are, because you can be an emerging artist at 20 or at 80. So we don't like to put an age on it. We also think that, you could have been an artist who had a pretty good run in another state, but now you're new to Florida. So technically you're emerging in Florida. So it's a pretty broad criteria, and it's great. It allows us to showcase a broad range of artists. So here's just a few images of past exhibitions. This is Lusa Molnar from Fresh Squeezed 4, which was last year. And altogether, in all 5 years, we've shown 31 artists to date. I want to say thank you to our wonderful sponsors. We couldn't do anything that we do here without their financial support and their encouragement. And our sponsors, as you see there, are Jeff and Jennifer Lovelady, Lisa and Perry Everett, who are wonderful friends and community supporters, and Smith and Associates Real Estate, and the Gobioff Foundation. The Gobioff Foundation has been our sponsors from the very beginning of it. So thank you to all of them. We appreciate your support. So this is year 5, and we have 5 new artists, and 2 of them, like I said, are speaking tonight. And during the talk, if you guys, if anyone in the audience has questions, you're welcome to type them in, and we will address them at the end. So first up, you're going to hear from Carolina Alamilla, who is a Miami-based artist, and we'll hear from her. I don't want to say too much by way of introduction because they're going to be doing all that. It's always much more interesting to hear from the artists themselves instead of me talking about them. And after Carolina, she's going to pass it along to Jacob Z. Wan, who will be talking about his studio practice. And that is it. So Carolina, you can take it away.
Awesome. Does everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. Cool. All right. I think everyone can see this. I hope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for being here, everyone. I just want to give a shout out to my colleague, Patrick. He's from Pennsylvania, or he's in Pennsylvania right now, and he's watching this. Thanks, Patrick, for being here, and Bridget and everyone else. So let's get started. Like Amanda said, I'm from Miami, and I'm one of the fresh squeezed artists. Um, I'm really just fortunate to show in Florida. That's been like a big dream of mine to show work, as I've been constantly away and coming back. I kind of am like a yo-yo in where I live. And one thing that has really allowed me to make work has been stepping away from South Florida and specifically. So, living in Texas, a big chunk of my work was really based on my upbringing in Miami and having this bilingual experience. And it's really interesting to be an outsider looking in to South Florida, because then we get to really appreciate the sounds, the smells, the colors, the food, and the culture that make it so special. So for me, being in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Texas, I think has made me a better artist, and a better artist in representing my experience of Miami. So I made this collage early in my graduate career, and all of these photos were taken with my phone. And I'd like to think that our what we take photos of in our phone are our subconscious, right? What we're attracted to, what we want to think about later on or scroll through later on. And for me, all of these were kind of, oh, this is kind of cool. Let me snap a photo. And when I brought these images all together, it made total sense. Like, this is my color scheme. This is what I want to make work about, or what I want to make the feeling of, right? I want to talk about warm days, hot sand, all these things that we think about or take for granted are now showing up in art, right? So, like the mango signs, which is very common in Florida because mango season happens in the summer, I really was thinking about this sense of familiarity and how I can bring that into the work. So, for this specific body of work at Marian, I was envisioning a lot of pool time. And it's probably because we were in the pandemic, and the only escapist experience, or only place you can really escape to, was a pool if you knew somebody. And I just found myself going to my friend's house as much as I could just so I can float and pretend that we weren't going through what we are going through. Um, but I also was thinking about a lot of things like these portraits of women in swim caps and the hope and joy they had. And also this idea of female astronauts and how they're looking towards a future and this place they have yet to discover, right? And for me, this combination of imagery and color birthed this body of work. And again, I kind of come back to this idea of feeling, right? How do I want feeling to be evoked in the work? I'm going to take time to read this artist statement. I think it's concise and clear, and it covers anything I missed. So I'm going to go ahead and read it to y'all. We don't fit in the past, nor do we know the future. We are looking to swim freely and safely amidst chaos and fear. Space Swim echoes the hope found in astronaut portraits and sunny days by the pool. It is in searching and developing one's identity that we find ourselves in a space that is free from burdens, even if the so called free space is in a constructed experience of a pool. Working through the weight of identity, I use colors and a sense of playfulness to engage with the viewer. I'm stepping away from the real and creating objects that lose their functionality, but are a metaphor for the hope and memory and environment. So for me, and this is something that you guys may not know about me, is that I come from a traditionalist ceramic background. I was making a lot of pottery years ago, and now I barely make pottery. But I think what's ingrained in me is this idea of functionality, and or how objects can represent functional objects or functionality in that way. And that's how I think about these swim caps. These objects represent something that once was functional, or the idea of it, but they are no longer that. If anything, they're mimicking a memory. And that's how I think about my work. They're an exaggeration of a feeling. And so when I decided to make swim caps, I thought I'd love to create this tactile experience, right? And so these buttons are all made from porcelain, and they're glazed and fired, and they're either sewn on or attached through pearl snap buttons. And so that idea of just attachment is quite familiar, but the object itself would not protect your hair. And if anything, will sink you in the pool because they're quite heavy. So there's this sense of playfulness in my work. And that's what I'm seeking now, is like, how do I represent these experiences in a nonsensical way, but carry some familiarity so you can enter into the work. Um, of course, these are portraits of me. This is what happens when you're by yourself and you have to use you. And so I really got into that mindset of those astronaut portraits and thinking about a longing for a place, right? Especially when we can't access that place. So I was living in Pennsylvania at the time. I'm actually in Florida right now for the summer. And I made these works in the dead of winter. So I was really just evoking summer feelings and a sense of warmth, right? And I think these photos turned out pretty well for, being the camera woman and the model. Really, they're about experience and feeling. So, like I said before, these are objects that are not functional, but they have a soft and hard element to them. And those are questions I have for myself in my work, is how can I represent that? A softness, but also a hard material. And so I find myself really combining fabric and ceramics together in non-traditional ways. Um, these floaties or flotation devices uh, happened after these swim caps. For me, I kept thinking about just this never ending pool experience. But then I was also thinking about dreaming and floating and those really just feelings that can come when you're totally relaxed. And so this flotation device or floaty began with that feeling, right? And so this is totally stuffed and it's quite pillow-like. And again, cannot save you or float you, but they mimic that experience. For me, using the life preserver allowed me to work in multiples. That's kind of my go-to, is I like working in many. I get to play around with their arrangement and installation. And again, these objects are in a totally relaxed state. They're just kind of living on top of each other and just totally relaxed. And again, I think about how we experience summer and vacation and all those things, and how we're kind of droopy and wet after a pool day, right? And that's what these life preservers do. When thinking about this exhibit, I was fully aware that the work is about me and my experience, but I also wanted an opportunity for the viewer, the visitor, to be represented. And for me, this kind of postcard setup was this opportunity. I think about how people can enter into my work, even though it's literally about my memories or my experience in South Florida, and how they can envision themselves. And so whenever I think about people entering there, I almost want them to envision themselves sitting on these chairs and being part of the memory. And it becomes kind of ironic, right? They're now making a new memory in a new space, in a new destination, whatever you would like to call it. And I appreciate that. I appreciate people entering, going, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I want to, pretend I'm on vacation kind of feeling. And I think that's what these clouds and chairs represent. So these are reupholstered beach chairs using the color scheme of just Art Deco buildings. And the clouds themselves are ceramic clouds and glazed with multiple slips and colored glazes. And I hope that's what people get to enter into, is like this frozen moment for them to be part of. So this is an outside window of my exhibit space. So this is the first thing I saw on opening night. And I think it's very telling of who I am and what my work is about. And also just the sense of playfulness. So one, I want to say thank you guys for being here and being part of the exhibit in a virtual way. But thank you to Amanda for hosting us, and thank you for just curating a great group of artists. So yeah, just a reminder, the exhibit's up till June 24th.
Thanks, Carolina.
Yay!
So I will go.
Yeah.
And
Welcome, Jacob.
you guys see it?
Yeah.
So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so happy and proud to be a part of this exhibition. And I thank you, Amanda, for everything. And I thank you, everyone, for being here. So let's let the party begin. So my name is Jacob, and I am gay. I identify myself as boy, man, Asian, Chinese, and I'm a book artist. So what does book mean to me is I love making books because books allows me to incorporate both of image making and object making into one art form, which allow me to explore myself through different mixed medias, different materials, and different techniques. So for me, like a book is something that I can play through with the pages and to develop a narrative, or something that I can put them together as a story for myself, as my experience. So as a book artist, I make traditional bonded books, which is the books that you can flip through. And also I make something non-traditional, such as this book. This book is called Tooth Hurts, and it is an accordion book, which you can like pull it really far, and you can do a different configuration with it. Then also I use a lot different found objects and threads in my book. And I also have like to use little pockets and secret pages to have to give out some like little hidden evidence in my book. And also during the pandemic, I made a mask book, which is I make use the mask as the cover, and the title to Cover Your Mouth. And the content of this book is I printed out Principal Donald Trump's speech about how everything is China's fault for the coronavirus, and I stitched out all of his speech and only left the important information that he was talking about China. So I emphasized his message for him. And then I used the title Cover Your Mouth. And then these are book objects, which is a handmade paper of cigarettes. And I use cigarette butts as pages because sometimes I notice how people smoke. It's more like just a moment to get away. So each cigarette become a story. And for a box of cigarettes, they become a box of stories. So this is an empty cigarette box made of handmade paper of cigarettes, and all the cigarettes is being smoked away, and there's no cigarette butts there because all the stories is fade in the past. So what's left is the present. And also, what am I really interested in books? How I can create a space as books. So I can use different of my work to present or mimic different stories, and audience in the space, they can look at different objects and different art piece and to stitch a storyline for themselves. So that's an experience I want to provide for my audience. So that leads to the exhibition or installation I have in first grade, which is called Boy and Moonlight. That's a little story title I give to myself. So in the center, I really love the installation, by the way. Thank you so much, Amanda. So in the center, you can see this the book called Pillow Talk, which is all made of handmade paper of my boyfriend's clothes, the clothes I collected from my ex-boyfriends and my boyfriends. And I put them in a gradient of from very light pink to really dark pink, then like faded away. So it kind of represents the relationship, how usually it starts from nothing, that then it's getting very intense, then sometimes it just slowly faded away. And also during the paper making process, there's like a broken pages and I stitched over with a golden thread. So it kind of represents how like in the relationship, usually we need to put efforts in to fix our relationship. Then there are a group of underwear pages, which for me, these are represents my experience of my romantic history. So based on my relationship, I kind of mimic the different underwears as different individuals, because I noticed how two people or two person get an intimacy. The underwear is the last protection of the physical honesty. And when it's just thrown on the floor, it becomes the moment that we're not paying attention, or it is the forgotten moment. So for me, I really noticed these underwears kind of become these human beings, and there contains this moment and these actions. So I really want to sell this moment and sell this story. So for example, like for this one, I put two underwears together as a position or gesture of cuddle. So the bigger underwear is cuddling the small underwear. And also this underwear, I only dyed one underwear in red dye. Then I washed them with other clean underwears. So the red dye is kind of represents how people usually talk like the gayness contagious. And some of my boyfriends like talk since there was like a straight. So this is just a kind of idea of like it's sometimes it's really about we look to ourselves and accept who we are. So that's why there's a single underwear that is hidden on the corner, and on the top it says "Found me." So the idea of like finding yourself, finding who you are. So the whole 7 pages so kind of represents the sequence of my relationship, how I understand and how this relationship have shaped my perspective or my identity of what I seek or who I am in a relationship. Then there's one which is called Overnight, and it's an installation with bed sheets, but because there was like not enough space, so we kind of limited it to 3 pages, but it still represents the story and plays with the idea of how these bed sheets become the pages that records of our identity. Because I have noticed, or me, before I go to sleep, before I fall asleep, I think a lot. A lot of time is overthink. So like this consciousness, this thought just comes over and it goes. So this repeated moments, and also when you share an intimacy relationship or intimacy moments with other people, these bed sheets become a page that records these important conversations, this closeness, and this tenderness of two individuals. So for me, these bed sheets become a page that records the history, the moment, and our physical identity. So the idea is audience can walk through between these sheets and between these pages, and they can read on the marks, the text on, or the image on the sheets, and they can stitch the story with their imagination. So the idea is about like a hide and seek, and also when you walk around these sheets, like your movement is making these um, sheets move. So it's become this sheets of breathing. And you may wondering why there's a lot of rabbits in my work. So in my previous work, I use a rabbit as a metaphor as who I am, because I used to have buck teeth and I was so timid. And as a little gay boy, I used to be picked on as a called rabbits. Then during my later on research and study, I noticed there's a rabbit god in China who is in charge of LGBT relationships. And another thing is in the movie Mulan, even in the original story of Mulan, there's a writing of rabbits, which is says like when there's two rabbits running on the floor, you cannot tell which one's male, which one's female. So rabbit has become this idea or the symbol of the LGBT members in my work. So that's why like there's a rabbit, look at the moon. The moon represents the night, the hope, the longing, and the desire. So together there is a story of how I'm seeking for the love, for the hope. And also I come back to a little bit more painting, and I also look about how in this work, I also look about how the self-accepting or self-love, you can see like from the beginning of the desire to anger, and come to the sadness, and come to the end is a smile of accepting the self. Then I was thinking about boys lying or sleeping, and how I can create a very imaginary or surreal environment to illustrate these dreams, these desires, and these thoughts. And I had a group of these boys just dreaming in a very soft and dream-like grass, a field, worryless, thoughtless. Then also I play with the idea of how the relationship or the promise in between the intimacy moments. So for me, a book is an expression of emotions, a book is a sequence of consciousness, and a book is a collection of moments. So just like human, to me, I think human beings are like made of fragments of memories, and a human is a book of memories. So just like you, your name is your title, your appearance is your cover, and your memories or your daily lives are your pages. And you are the hero of your own story. And in my work, I really celebrate the importance of oneself. The idea of you need to love yourself because you are your best friends. So life is a book, and we're the author of our own book. Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacob.
Let
Thank you,
me touch.
Carolina.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Those were wonderful. Does anybody have, I have a couple of questions, but I will open it up. I think there's really not many of us here. So if someone, you don't have to type it in the chat, if somebody just wants to unmute themselves and
Or I have questions for
ask a
Carolina.
question. Oh yeah, you can ask each other questions.
Yeah. So, which should I go for? Is there any questions, or should I ask Carolina some
Go
questions?
ahead.
So I really like both of our can talk about dream and about like how it's about like a look for a place, belonging, and I really like how we use a lot of soft materials as well. So like I also can say a lot of like performance piece or art or like a relational like art happens in your work as well. So like do you have more idea of like what you're gonna do next or like how you're gonna expand this series of work?
That was my question too.
Oh, okay. So I can read your mind.
Yeah, so for me, this is a pretty new body of work, and I was really thinking about recreating a community pool in another exhibit coming up. Um, and I think about how a viewer can place themselves within a space. And this was a really good opportunity for me to just think about the exhibit space and think about how people navigate and move around it. Um, I do agree that we both have this idea of softness and longing and nostalgia in our work, whether it's like nostalgia for relationships or experience. And I like that about your work. I think there's this really lovely layering you have towards it, especially with the shades of pink. Um, so yeah, I'm really just thinking about softness and how that can really be contrasted against the ceramic objects I put in it or sew to it. So for me, that's been a good challenge in thinking about how can I represent these two materials within a space and make it look harmonious. Because anytime I think about ceramics in the more contemporary sense, you only see clay in the space, right? There's nothing else obstructing you from the ceramic vessel or installation. And I'm really trying to verge away from that. I want this relationship between materials. I don't think I answered your question, but that's okay
But that was good
because
talk.
I'll probably cover something later. I'll like circle back around.
I was thinking about that while you two were talking, and as a curator, and Carolina, I know you curate some yourself, you're always trying to synthesize things like, okay, how do these two things go together, both conceptually and visually in the space? And I'm like, wow, you two really have a lot. I mean, your work is completely different, but you have so many commonalities. As you were speaking, Carolina, I was thinking of, you talking about the functionality of an object. In your swim caps, you would sink to the bottom of the pool if you wore them. And then Jacob with his books, they're books in the literal sense, but or in the conceptual sense, but it's not something you could just hold in your lap and read necessarily. And the idea, like you were saying, of the nostalgia and the softness, and what else? There was something I wrote down, a bunch of things, and dealing with memory. And then the other thing I was thinking about, which is obvious, but I didn't really think about it earlier, was well, first of all, the self-portraits that you both have. And correct me if I'm wrong, but both of your separate self-portraits are in mediums that you're relatively new to, or it's kind of out of your comfort zone, like you with photography. And Jacob, I remember when we did your studio visit, you were a little shy about your paintings, and we were like, they're amazing, they have to be in the show. So I just thought that was, I don't know what it means, but I just thought that was really
Thank you.
really interesting. And yeah, there's something, this isn't really a question, but I find it interesting with you, Carolina, that you're from Miami, you grew up in Florida, your work is very Florida looking, which I love, but the majority, correct me if I'm wrong, of your studio practice has been in other states.
Yeah.
So, because I was going to ask you, oh, how has living in Pennsylvania recently affected your work? Well, you're making the work that's here now. So, I don't know. I just find that very interesting. So the work you're making, you never made in Florida. So,
No. What's interesting for me when I think about my time in Florida is that I definitely like fill my cup with like inspiration and photographs and experiences. And then as I go back to work or go back to grad school in that sense, I would then like process everything almost in a very non-distracting place, right? It's almost like Florida has so much stimulation that it takes a while for you to really like process that experience. And so when I was living in West Texas, it's quite the opposite. It's very brown. So in that place, I was really longing for color, if anything, and like fluffy clouds and just a sense of organic floofiness, right? And I think about that maybe it takes me a while to process experiences, but then also it's like I'm looking in. I'm really being able to journal about my childhood in Miami and just the cultural melting pot that it is. And so I feel really fortunate that I get to do that, because when you're immersed in something, you don't note the small details, right? So I guess once I step away, I feel like, oh my gosh, there's something so special about this. I have to make work about it.
mhm. And that's one of the benefits, if you can call it a benefit, of the craziness of this past year, that it's like you said, those self-portraits, maybe they wouldn't have happened if you had had so much alone time. So,
Yeah.
and Jacob, how did the pandemic affect the way that I mean, your work is so personal and intimate. Did the pandemic affect how you made your work, or the ideas that went into your work, or you would have made that kind of work anyway?
I think I was kind of like in um I was kind of interested in painting and in image making. I wasn't sure because why, because like when the pandemic happened and my studio space was limited just to my bedroom. And really interesting thing is I was kind of just enjoying myself. Like I teach in the morning, then during the night, I kind of want to just work on my art, and I will pour a glass of wine and I will play all some music, and I kind of just get into a Zoom, like a start painting. So I just paint a little bit more, and I really enjoy the painting. And like unlike I'm doing the large installation like pieces of the bed sheets, then because there was like not a lot of space I can practice and storage my work. So I have had to kind of just work a little bit smaller and then work a little bit more like a person, like a intimate. And I think that that's good because because my work is more about personal, about these intimacy moments, and it really helped me to get a quick ideas out. And yeah, and I think that was very interesting. And really interesting thing also is like I don't have any other models besides like my boyfriend, so I have just used him and myself to do a lot like painting. Yeah, and another interesting thing is like when Elena was talking about like she was working in different locations, and I only stayed in Florida like for 7 years after I moved to USA. So it's kind of like I never really went to other states until like maybe last month I kind of we drove to like North Carolina. So like it was like and I saw like these flowers opening on the I-95. I was like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. So when Carolina was talking about like how she come to Florida and kind of just like stay here and go other place to work on work, I feel like that's kind of how she take these memories and all these like diaries with her phone and have all these sketches and just go other place and process this like work. So it's kind of like collecting all the stories, like a writing a diary. That's why I feel like that was very interesting. How like she is kind of everywhere but making Florida, but I am in Florida, but I kind of try to illustrate the dreams about somewhere else. So yeah, but also we're still talking about a very safe space that we're both feel comfortable and yeah, don't yeah.
We do have a question from Alec, who's tuning in. If you want to unmute yourself, you can just ask.
Hey
Hi.
there. Just have a quick question about um, sort of as you both explore new mediums. I'm sorry, I'm at work and they're working on a new showroom in the background, so there's a lot of background noise. Um, but in any event, as you're exploring these new mediums, like how do you overcome that fear that you may have about exploration? As you mentioned, like you get into the comfort zones and whatnot, but like truthfully, like self-growth doesn't really happen until you venture out into that uncomfort zone. So yeah, I'm just curious how that works and how you feel about that. And again, sorry for the grinding.
Carolina, do you want to go first? You muted.
Okay. I was gonna say that if you wanted to take it, but I'll go ahead. So that's a really good question, Alec. I'm a big believer in fake it till you make it. And honestly, I had a lot of doubts in this photo experience of mine, especially since I had no one to consult with. Grad school was a really wonderful space for me to just pick people's brains. Um, in this regard, it was just me in my office. And I really was thinking about what is the best medium. And that has been kind of the question I've had for myself since graduating with my MFA was what is the best medium? How do I present this? And that's how photos started coming into play. I realized these swim caps alone are interesting, but they didn't do justice in the feelings I was trying to evoke. And so I thought I have to mimic these ads. Like I have to mimic this portraits of astronauts. And so it was a lot of trial and error on my part. It was a lot of learning about color correction and proper printing, things that I again did not learn in the ceramic studio. But it was, I think, really eye-opening to see myself and my work be presented in a different way. Um, I normally would consider myself a 3D artist, but now because of these photographs, I almost want to say it's 3D slash 2D. The object itself is valuable, and the photograph makes it even more valuable, I think, or more special. And yeah, I definitely, there's a lot of doubt, I think, for me, but if you have those 5 seconds of confidence, you're like, okay, I think I could do it. I think I could do it. You just have to ride on it. That's what I hear. And it kind of works.
Yeah, you should just say you're an artist. And
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
and yeah, thank you, Alec. That was a good question. And Alec is my friend. Thank you for being here. Sorry, I didn't know you at work. So for me, I think it is kind of hard to find or try something new because like I tried a lot of different things until I feel confident to say I own it or I know how to work with it. And that's why like I don't necessarily really like say I work with something and I say I'm a mixed media book artist, so I can give myself a little bit more like possibilities and options to work with. But I do find out I tend to work with the things that I feel subconsciously attracted to. And a good thing about me and what I think is like I like to connect things together. So if I notice something and I will say like why it happened, then why it happened, then why it happened. So I like to stitch things together. Then if I attract to something like a very hard or like a metal looking, totally different than like my fabric or paper thing, then I will think like how it's used in a book idea, how this can help, or like how it can be used in the book form. So I will start look for the form or the meaning of this object. And I also will start dig or explore why I'm attracted to this material. So that's why like the materiality of the book is very interesting, because for me, I think a lot of things can be concerned as a book, like from the older ancient like stone carved tablets or like wall paintings to or this like 3D and totems, or to nowadays we have audiobook, we have like a digital book, we also have films or songs, like you have the title, you have the lyric, you have the story. So I think a lot of things is about like how as artists, how we can create a new things based on the things we already knew, how we can surprisingly use this material to create the things we're representing. So I think that's kind of like a challenging, but like all the challenges are the opportunities. So I think like all these like ideas or like challenge will be very interesting to explore and to like own it. So I see this as a good experimenting or like a journey to do it. Yeah. So hope that answers your question. Thank you for being here.
I think he had Alec, did you have a follow-up question?
I do. I really appreciate both of your answers. It's really fascinating insight. And what I'm curious about, sort of with both of you, is as you're exploring concepts, but now across different types of mediums. Carolina, with you, it's you're going from that 3D to now you're really exploring the 2D, but sort of maybe the similar concepts, and really drawing inspiration from Florida, of course. And then Jacob, you're venturing into paintings and whatnot, especially. I'm curious, sort of, as you're very familiar with concepts and things that you're expressing, do the concepts sort of evolve and change as you explore new mediums, and sort of, or is it, and is it sort of like, is the concept changing, or is it sort of like, I don't know, is it like, is there sort of like different sides to a cube suddenly, where it's like it's the same object, but now it's a fresh perspective? I don't know. I'm just curious to see what you guys have to say about how that concepts change on different mediums.
That's a really good question. I feel like I'm back in grad school.
Yeah, you
so
have good questions tonight, Alec.
okay, so I have to say, for me at least, concepts can evolve. Absolutely. So this work is so fresh for me. Um, I have a feeling it's going to evolve in each gallery space that I put it in. And the other components that play up the swim caps or the photographs can really evolve that concept or really push that definition of it. So I definitely have to agree, the work changes with time. And I felt like this work could have two veins of thought. And for me, it was either this like longing for a place, longing for hope, or it could be this opposite feeling of like, this is your reality, this altered reality, that there's no water, because really there's no water in play in this gallery space. And it's quite mimicking, and could be in a mean way mimicking a feeling that maybe can never happen again. So that's what I was thinking of. Obviously, I'm choosing the lighter side. And yeah, but I think we're human and we evolve and we change, and um, as do our works do. And I feel maybe for Jacob, that's the same, right? As you meet more
Yeah.
people and have different relationships.
Yeah, I agree. Like my work has changed quite a bit from the very beginning. I was working on like my experience in my middle school, and I was more talking about like how an individual can be good yet can be bad at the same time. So like one's identity actually is very complicated. Then I will start working about like the struggle between like a boyhood and like adulthood. Then like come to like the works about LGBT communities, but like everything actually is connected together. It's all like a circle back to like my subconscious about like I was being this little timid gay boy and thinking about like how I can dream about like the future or the hope. So I think everything is related and just like waves or like life, everything is like a circle comes back. But also I think like I'm writing story and a lot of things can influence my story line. And yet like when I finish one story, I can just put it away until I want to reread it again. Then when I read that story, then it will be another meaning because I'm different than this one who was writing the story. And now I'm like a different person. So like the story involves too, and like who we are like involving as well. So I think it's kind of like a very interesting journey. We can just keep exploring what's next. So yeah, that's very exciting. But yet everything is very connected together. Yeah.
So Patrick has a question of, I guess, of both of you. I don't know if this is going to run out in exactly an hour, but we'll talk fast. Of what you both are doing in your studio now, like today.
Jacob, do you want to answer that?
Okay, I will go first. So today what I did is I revisited drawing. I went back, try to different media such as charcoal drawing, and on top use pencil because I want to try to different structure or process how I can create a quick drawing and also keep everything in proportion. Yes, I try to finish fast.
For me, I actually just got into town from Texas. I went to go visit some friends, and we went to these estate sales, and I bought so much fabric. So this fabric is beautiful, intact, a lot of it from the 60s, 50s. And so I'm ready to sort through it and decide what I want to do with it. But I'm really thinking of pillowed forms again, but maybe altering them, creating, I don't know, getting weird with it. I have a lot of bead trimmings, so that's gonna might play into it. But yeah, I overdid it with the fabric. It was just too good to pass up.
No such thing.
Good question, Patrick.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that was a good question. I like that immediacy. That's great.
Mhm.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you to the audience members that joined us. Thank you so much for supporting these artists. And thank you, Carolina and Jacob. I love working with you. I'm so proud of having your work in the gallery. I know some of you don't live in this immediate area, but you're missing out not seeing it in person. So for the next 2 Thursdays, we have 2 more gallery talks with our other 3 fresh squeezed artists. And next week at the same Thursday, same time, 6 p.m. is Bridget Couvert and Zorae Cyrus. So please tune into that. And thank you again to the artist for your time and for your amazingness. That was great. I learned so much about you guys, and I thought I knew everything there was to know. So
thank you, Amanda, for everything, and thank you, Murray Art Center, for everything, and thank you everyone for being here. And I'm so happy to know so much more about Carolina. And I'm looking forward for Bridges next week. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Love you all. Bye. Bye.
Great
Thank
job.
you.